It was Easter Sunday, the year 1722. A Dutch sailor, Admiral Jacob Roggeveen, landed here for a few hours, and he gave a new European name to an island Polynesians had thought of for centuries as the navel of the world. They'd called it Rapa Nui. The Admiral renamed it Easter Island. (2,500 miles off the coast of Chile, its nearest inhabited neighbours are Pitcairn of Bounty fame, 1,300 miles to the west, and Robinson Crusoe's island, Juan Fernandez, 1,600 miles to the southeast. Rapa Nui is the easternmost island of Polynesia. It's a volcanic triangle 14 miles long, with peaks and jagged crater rims that have softened with the weathering of 100,000 years since the last eruption here settled and died. There were no indigenous people. Rapa Nui's human story begins with Hotematua and is told many ways. Where did he come from and when? 1,000 years ago? 500? From the Marquesas perhaps, or Mangariba. Some say South America. But Hotematua came in, guided by great sea turtle, and landed here at Anakena. He brought with him staple foods, chickens and the Polynesian rat, yams and manioc, and he set up a firm order of life on Rapa Nui. Then the stories go on to tell of sadness and strife and homesickness for Hiva, the legendary land of his origins. But truths are for scientists, legends are for songs. The original Polynesian sarsau is a commemorative feast with dancing, and still they echo the legends of Hotematua, his coming, his death, and his burial. It's a feast a little bit like a modern barbecue. It pays a sort of frivolous homage to the symbolic breadfruit and the fish, the island bounties of land and sea. Horses roam free over a rock-strewn savanna, many of them carrying the anchor brand of the Chilean Navy that brought them here. They're the standard transport and the best. Horses that seem all to have established a uniform dark chestnut to blend with the organic colors of the island. Rapa Nui is Chilean, administered as if it were part of the mainland, but with due heed to its very special circumstances. Total population is about 1,600, the great majority living in or around the capital village of Hangaroa. Now the airstrip has offered them mobility. Rapa Nui is a touchdown on the air route to Tahiti and Fiji, and so Australia and New Zealand. But it's also within 5 hours' reach of the flesh pots and bustle of Santiago. Easter Islanders, like ideas, come and go, but most of them, with a quiet display of wisdom, just stay put. The past is inescapable here, a brooding but very benign mystery which seems always to be just over one's shoulder. And it mingles well with the joys of being alive, climbing to a windy hilltop. The crater slopes of Ranuraraku. Here are the quarries from which each enormous monolithic figure was cut, the classic moai. The rock, technically, is compacted volcanic tuff, shaped and sculptured by adzes with heads of the harder basalt which came from the volcanic core itself. These tools were called tokis, and discarded and blunted toki fragments lie around everywhere in the grass and buried in the soft sandstone. The whole hillside is not only an outdoor museum of craftsmanship, but a monument to a religious fervour of creativity unknown elsewhere, totally unique, inexplicable, with its own style and presentation of features, not a single traceable origin for the inspiration. Extraordinary thing is that the first Easter Islanders were supposed to be ocean castaways, fugitives, or at best explorers, people who would have counted their lucky stars just to survive. Yet they joined here in a state of competitive harmony, expending unbelievable physical energy to devise and unify a religion, an artistic effort, to come up with something all their own. They made 600 moai, measuring up to 65 feet long and 82 tons in weight. And they were all carved from the slopes of Ranuraraku, to be broken free, slid down, dragged and levered for miles. Taken to sacred ahus across the island, or stood upright at the quarry's foot to gaze disdainfully out to sea. The moai of Easter Island, as unique a trademark of local endeavour as the Taj Mahal, the Colosseum or the Eiffel Tower, but with 10 times the mystery. Great carved cylinders of red scoria rock lie about. They're the top knots, the hau moai, hats for the moai. Some say these people had red hair and the scoria added a touch of realism. 58 of these top knots once rested on statues and about 25 still remain near the quarry where they were made. But though they'd roll easily, mounting them on top of a moai must have called for a real labour of ramp building and engineering. How the shades of those builders must have turned in their ahus when the crane did it so easily in the restoration of Tahai in 1970. The moai stand on ahus, masonry stages of enormous size that seem to have been altars, crematoria and tombs. There are more than 245 of them. Lots seem to be modified later for an apparent change in ritual. There are foundations of houses in the form of boats, and they lie here and there in the grass, drilled with holes to take roof-supporting timbers. The canoe shape certainly has connotations of an island origin, Polynesia, somewhere in that rash of dots that scatters across the tropical Pacific, until the thought is shaken, if not totally shattered, by a wall at Vinapu, a wall that matches in every last detail the great Inca walls of the high Andes, continental South America. Thor Heyerdahl wondered and set out to prove a possibility with the voyage of the Kon-Tiki. Incas were certainly here, but did they come intentionally or were they shipwrecked? Were they captives? Were they taken by raiding parties from here, Rapa Nui? One thing at least is certain, this island knew turbulent times. Enemies toppled the moais face down. The crumbling of a religion began, a religion too ambitious, too demanding to be sustained. overpopulation exaggerated by a tiny island whose people perhaps worship too much and farm too little. Death, destruction, decay. Then, in the late 1800s, the Peruvians moved in and took the remaining men into slavery to work the Guano Islands. And Rapa Nui had reached a point in its history from which, if things were to change further, they could only improve. Filtering facts from a slough of conjecture is now a worldwide challenge. Bill Malloy, professor of anthropology at the University of Wyoming, lectures to visitors at Tongariki.
Bringing in a sea level increase of perhaps as much as 10 meters. Destroyed the Ahu completely and tossed the 20-ton statues inland, as we see here, some of them as far as 100 meters. Many of the stones and smaller elements of the Ahu were pushed even further inland. So that the only thing that remains now is a remarkable pile of rubble, which is especially interesting in that it shows very graphically the power of the sea.
That's a beauty. Hey, here's a turtle.
And there's still others over here. Almost everywhere you go on this rock you find...
Why is it they picked on this particular rock?
Oh, I suppose it was handy. Well, I'm serious. These lines of holes...
But Bill Malloy and his expeditions have been responsible for an ever-increasing program of excavation and restoration work on the island. These 7 matched statues were re-erected in 1960 with local help, using only the sort of equipment available to the original sculptors. Now they begin to reveal an astronomical sense, awareness of seasons that one would expect from ocean navigators. These people understood about solstices and equinoxes. Ahus and Moais were oriented to the azimuths of the rising and setting sun.
We note also that the 7 statues which are behind me are matched with each other, so that their heights are bilaterally symmetrical.
It's Sunday in Hangaroa. Like Chile, Easter Islanders are predominantly Catholic, though there's a feeling rather like a ship. Not just a greater general inclination to pray, but a little more tolerance about the way it's done, a relaxing of the catechismic strictures that can apply on the mainland. The Catholic Church is the only church on the island, but all denominations are welcome and show gratitude by gifts of handicraft to the church. Like the Pitcairn Islanders, wood carving is an industry and won't always allow tradition to inhibit imagination. Classic Moais are here, interpretations of the victorious Auriki Tangata Manu with the beak of a bird, Maki the creator, fanciful and well-known fish, turtles and seabirds, and all in the wood of the paradise tree and eucalyptus and imported woods from Chile and Peru. Some say Rongo, being the language of teaching, was used on these tablets to make them into textbooks for the present, for education. Others suggest that they're historical chronicles for the future, like the hieroglyphics of ancient Egypt. And it's a good academic argument, especially as nobody yet understands a syllable. Aesthetics are a safer field. Whatever the intended meaning, these are exciting shapes and attractive patterns, and often starkly recognizable as portraits of the stock in trade of the day. This island is the strangest mixture. Every beach and headland acts like a magnet on its own account, just because it's good to be there. But each has its story, and nowhere more than down on the southwest tip, the crater edge of Ranukau, with the little skerries offshore, Motu Nui, Motu Iti, and the shark's fin pinnacle of Motu Kau Kau. The Birdman ceremony was enacted here to the glory of Maki, creator and first god of all. It was to elect a new Tangata Manu with supreme power over life and death. The test? To swim from the headland to Motu Nui and be the first back with the egg of a sooty tern. Maki the creator and the frightening, victorious Ariki Tangata Manu. Will it ever be unraveled, the significance of the cave paintings on Motu Nui? Then a single bird brings reality. There are no terns now, they are displaced by imported carrion hawks, but the cliffs are as high and the sea as hostile. Such a marathon with an unbroken egg is some test for a religious leader. And all the while, the contestants and the judges lived here and trained in these stone huts, waiting for the terns to lay, preparing for their ordeal. One climbs the crater rim with a wish to sit here forever, listening to the wind, wondering how and why and what these men were like. On some charts of the Pacific Ocean, there's a point mark that says simply, world's most distant point from land. It's no surprise to discover that the nearest land to that evocative point is Rapa Nui. It makes perfect sense that the remotest island should be the greatest anthropological enigma of all time.